Hello, I am JC Paz, and in this video, we are going to review how to install Oracle Linux 9.4 on a Windows computer with WSL2 being available to you. If WSL is not installed on your Windows 10 or 11 computer, we will see the steps to install it in a quick way. Certain jobs or tasks often necessitate using multiple operating systems due to software compatibility, specific development environments, or testing needs. Software development. Developing cross-platform applications requires testing on Windows, Linux, Mac OS, and even mobile OS. System administration. Administrators may manage mixed environments. Security testing. Ethical hackers and penetration testers need multiple OS platforms to simulate attacks, test vulnerabilities, and use specialized tools. Data science and AI development. Some tools and libraries perform differently across operating systems. Using virtualization solutions, multiple operating systems can run simultaneously on a single physical machine. Windows Subsystem for Linux provides a lightweight Linux environment on Windows. VirtualBox VMware, full-fledged virtualization tools to run multiple operating systems. Hyper-V, Microsoft's built-in virtualization technology. WSL2 is a compatibility layer that allows you to run a full Linux kernel on Windows, runs in a lightweight virtual machine, and supports faster file system access and better integration with Docker. It provides a seamless Linux development environment within Windows. WSL2 is free and all the Linux distros that you can install on it. To install WSL, the prerequisites are 1. Windows 10 version 1903 or higher, or Windows 11 with build 18362 or higher. 2. Windows features. Ensure that both the virtual machine platform and Windows Subsystem for Linux features are enabled. 3. BIOS UEFI virtualization. Virtualization must be enabled in your system's BIOS UEFI. 4. WSL2 Linux kernel update. Install the Linux kernel update package from Microsoft. Windows features. Ensure that both the virtual machine platform and Windows Subsystem for Linux features are enabled. Install the Linux kernel update package from Microsoft. First, we will check the WSL version using WSL version inside a PS terminal. If we do not have version above 2.0, we need to update with the command WSL update. We see that there are no updates. First, let us see the installed versions with the command WSL-L-V. See that we have 4 Linux versions installed. 1 Kali, 2 Ubuntu, and 1 Oracle Linux. These 4 distros are not running in memory. Let us run Kali Linux with the command WSL-D Kali-Linux. Also, we can run Ubuntu with WSL-D Ubuntu 22. At any time, we can run WSL-L-V to see the menu of existing installed distros. And now Oracle with WSL-D OracleLinux9 3. At any time from the Linux command line, we can run the command cat/etc/os-release to see that we have Oracle Linux 9.4. To back up an installed distro, we need to do the command WSL-export Oracle Linux_9 3, and the directory and file name of the backup in this case will be d://backups/Oracle9 32.tar. This will take a few minutes to finish the backup. Once it finishes, we can check it is already there and then proceed to erase it. To erase it, we can do it with command WSL-unregister Oracle Linux_9 3. If we want to check the name before going to erase it, we can list all the distros with WSL-L-V, and after verifying, we can proceed to erase. Windows let us know that the action already took place. You can check one again and now only have 2 Ubuntu and 1 Kali distros installed. Oracle Linux 9.4. Oracle Linux 9.4 is a powerful, versatile, and enterprise-ready operating system designed to handle the demands of modern workloads, both on premises and in the cloud. Its combination of high performance, security features, container support, and strong Oracle integration makes it an ideal choice for enterprises running Oracle and non-Oracle applications. Oracle Linux 9.3 installation. To install Oracle Linux within WSL2, we need to download the installation file from the Microsoft Store. After downloading, the installation begins. After a few moments, the installation finishes and a user must be registered with administrative privileges. The root password must be assigned at this moment and retype it. Create at least one user. The user will be Gennaro. The password must be provided twice. It will have administration functions. And this is the end of the Oracle Linux 9.3 installation. The first command that we will give to the OS is cat/etc/os-release to see the installed version. And it is 9.3. Now I am going to clear the screen to give the next command. It didn't work. Well, let us give the command sudo dnf update. The system asks for the administrator password and we must provide it. The update begins downloading several files. 3 packages were installed and 96 upgraded. After some minutes, the update is complete. And we will recheck the OS release. cat/etc/os-release. And now we have the 9.4 version installed. Going back to PowerShell. The command WSL-L-V show all the distros registered with WSL. Ubuntu 22, Ubuntu 20, Kali Linux, and Oracle Linux 9.3. Don't forget that initially it was 9.3 from the Microsoft Store, but due to updates internally it is 9.4. To run from the PowerShell Oracle Linux, we need the command WSL-D Oracle Linux _9_3. And just to finish with a command, let us retype cat/etc/os-release. I am going to stop this lecture here, but in a new video I will see how to install MySQL Server 8 inside Oracle Linux 9. It doesn't matter if it is running in a desktop machine, a virtual machine like VirtualBox or WSL. See you in the next lecture. Don't forget to subscribe and give me a like. In this way I can continue doing content for you. Thank you very much.